The next morning, Casey had arrived early to get Lady Grange ready for the visitor's arrival. While the fire was burning nicely, he set about getting the engine wiped down before he set about polishing the brasses. But something seemed to be off with the pressure gauge. Usually when he gets to the stage of polishing, the pressure should be hitting 60. Casey tapped the gauge again. The needle moved, but ever so slightly. "You must have a steam leak somewhere, old girl," Casey said, and proceeded to look the engine over. He looked all over, but he couldn't find a leak anywhere. Perhaps it's the coal. He took out his pocket watch and checked the time of the visitor's arrival. He should have time to relight the fire again, and then hopefully should have steam up. But by the time the others started to arrive for work, Lady Grange hadn't improved. There was nothing wrong with the coal, as her fire was good and hot. Maybe there's a blockage somewhere. There was no time to look for it. By now, Whitehouse was bringing his coaches to the platform with Puffer, and the visitors were already arriving. "Let's just hope it clears before I reach the station," Casey muttered as he clambered into the cab seat. Lady Grange wheezed her way along the line towards the station. Dark clouds of smoke began to appear from the chimney, as well as several sparks. "What a time for the spark resistor to fail on me," sighed Casey. The passengers were waiting at the platform when he arrived. Whitehouse had just turned Puffer round on the turntable when he saw the wheezing state of Lady Grange. "Here, her ladyship doesn't sound too good today, Case," he commented. "Nothing that a good run along the line shouldn't fix," Casey said, but deep down he was wondering how far the engine would go under her low steam pressure. Cars was at the platform seeing to the visitors' tickets. "I say, my man, this engine of yours does look a bit smoky by the way it passes there. I just hope there isn't going to be any more of that flying ash and that sort of thing on our journey, "I really can't say, sir," said Cars, looking on as Casey began backing the engine down onto the train. "I might have a word with him when I get the chance, though." Lady Grange's steam pressure was now showing signs of strain. The needle kept jerking back and forth, but nothing seems to be getting through. Casey tapped the gauge glass again, while Cars went through the safety procedures to the passengers. The right-of-way was given, and with a feeble whistle, Lady Grange remained where she was. Casey jerked back and forth the regulator handle to try and coax a bit of steam into the cylinders, but nothing but a hiss came out. Then suddenly, everything happened at once. Without warning, Lady Grange jerked forwards, causing the coaches to bump into each other and knocking the passengers about. Casey tried to shut off the regulator, but another jerk caused him to push it full open. Lady Grange gave a mighty whoosh, and from her funnel a cloud of hot soot and ash shot up into the air and rained down on top of Casey, the visitors, Cars and Whitehouse. The visitors shouted and yelled as they took shelter under the footbridge, but by then the damage had been done. All the visitors' smart clothes were ruined. "You stupid kid!" one of them yelled at Casey. "Do you realise how much I paid for this suit? I will be reporting this railway to the directors," another one stated, pointing the tip of her umbrella at Cars's chest. "Think this is funny, pulling stunts like that?" "Well, I'm terribly sorry, ma'am, but this has never happened before, and I will definitely be looking into the matter," said Cars. He hurried over to where Casey had managed to control Lady Grange before another eruption occurred. He swatted the soot off his cap against his boot before looking gingerly at Cars. I can't understand it. She was working just fine yesterday. I don't know what's wrong with her." "Clearly something you missed while cleaning her out last night," said Cars. He looked inquisitively. "You did clean Lady Grange's tubes out last night, Case?" Casey looked at his feet pitifully. "It was only the one time," he muttered. One time? And what has that led to?" Cars exclaimed. "And now because of this little mishap, we've lost half the visitors for this special. Look, take Lady Grange back and get her cleaned up to be ready for the next lot to arrive later on. Whitehouse, see if you can find a cleaner set of coaches." Cars was about to write up the report, only to find that his clipboard had nothing but black sooty patches all over it. "If anyone needs me, I'll be in my office to clear my head," he muttered to anyone who could hear. Casey couldn't explain what could have caused Lady Grange to act in such a manner. But what else could it be? He kept pondering about it while he tried to scrub the worst of the soot off the boiler, which was slowly cooling now the fire had been dropped. Maybe it was caused by clogged tubes. But they never got this bad. And he was sure he'd remembered to clean them this morning. He should have told Cars about that there when he asked him if he had cleaned the engine out. but he was so puzzled by everything he forgot. Oh, this wasn't like him at all. Everything alright, Kiss? Casey looked up to see Corpse walking towards him. Heard you cause the smoke screen at the station. Blocked tubes, do you think? Possibly. But not something you'd expect from an engine this size. Honestly, I've driven Lady Grange so many times since I bought her, and she never gave me trouble like this. Well, how long have you had her? 3 months? Maybe she's due for an overhaul. But she can't, though. She was in tip-top condition when I left her in the sheds last night, and today she does this. Well, maybe you've been overdoing it with the work lately. Maybe you just lost your touch. Casey looked horrified at this. He'd never lost a knack at driving an engine. Every engine he'd driven at the railway, he'd managed it with care and attention. Maybe he was losing his touch. Perhaps this is something that happens to drivers from time to time. Look, why not go and have a cup of tea and I'll have a look at Lady Grange later today. I'm sure I'll find out what's wrong. Casey took his cap off and scratched his head. The events of that morning made him feel quite anxious and, well, a cup of Jane's tea always seems to make him feel better. He thanked Corpse and, after some hesitation, made his way to the mess room. And he has no understanding of the cause? That is correct, sir. He says she was working fine last night and only started acting up like this morning. Probably a small technical fault, but I have Rory at hand to see to the repairs. It could mean that we won't have an engine free to take the visitor's train. The chairman thought about it carefully. Then he remembered something. We do have one engine available. That one we use for shunting purposes. Puffer? Well, it can haul a train alright, but with passengers it might be a bit risky. Mike isn't due his passenger hauling test until another 4 weeks. Well, we'll just have to look over this one for now until we can get Betty steamed up to carry on the rest of the day's trains. See to it. Very good, sir. But I can't take passengers now. I'm not qualified yet. Look, Mike, you're the only one at the moment with an engine at the ready. It's just until we can get Betty steamed up to cover for you. But Puffer isn't as strong as Lady Grange or Betty, added Casey. Look, if it can arrange our trains with ease, surely it can tackle one with ease, said Carr sternly. Now go on over and have your engine ready for the next group to arrive. I still don't think that engine should do it, said Casey when Whitehurst had left. And what do you expect me to do, Kiss? Have Sir Giles brought out of the sheds? Sir Giles was an old diesel engine that the railway had bought many years ago. It can haul a train of passengers with ease, but its heavy pollutant exhaust, loud engine and dodgy regulator made it a 7¼ gauge nightmare. Casey had taken a great dislike to the diesel and made sure it was well kept at the back of the sheds. I suppose that's the first time for everything, he said after a pause. Is that our engine? I always thought they were bigger than that. Well, it is a miniature railway, I suppose. The comments from the passengers upon seeing Puffer backing down onto the train were getting to Whitehurst. He knew he wasn't ready to take passengers until he had passed his official test, but then desperate times called for desperate measures. The passengers boarded the train and Whitehurst waited for the right of way. As the guard's whistle blew, Puffer's wheels spun vigorously to get a grip. At last, some traction had taken hold, and the little engine pulled a line of coaches out of the station and onto the open line. They rounded the curve and into the forest, Puffer's whistle sounding through the treetops. Past Bog Holt, the carriage sheds, and through Pine Tree Holt with no trouble at all. Now for the loop. The line steepens here, and sometimes, though quite rarely, engines get stuck at this point. But Whitehurst wasn't going to let that happen on his first train. He increased the power on the controls as they went through the wall portal and entered the section. Corpse was nearby examining Lady Grange with Casey. They could hear Puffer approaching and decided to see how the little engine would get on. Puffer came into view from the wall's portal. Whitehurst gave a quick toot on the whistle to show that everything was okay. And then... Well, no bones broken at least, said Jane sometime later. But you've taken quite a nasty bang to the head there. A few days of rest should do you good. I'm glad none of the passengers got hurt. But it cost us a coach, though, said Corpse. The whole thing split in half. Not to mention the damage Puffer got when I hit the wall. I knew that engine was no good to take that train, exclaimed Casey coldly. Mark shouldn't have put him to it. Guys, Mike has just come out of a serious accident. I think something more along the lines of, are you alright, or glad that you're not too seriously hurt may be more suitable, said Jane coldly. Casey and Corpse subsided. Where is Mark now? Asked Whitehouse. He's with the chairman and the directors, said Corpse. Apparently they're not too pleased about the whole incident. I should think so too after the way Mark has treated the whole incident, said Casey. Chris, Jane said sternly. Casey remained quiet and sipped his tea. Just then, the overhead tannoy whirred into life. This is a model engineer's announcement. Could Christopher Jones and Mike Whitehouse report to the chairman's office? I expect he wants to apologise after all that has happened, said Corpse, helping Whitehouse to his feet. You okay now? I'm fine, said Whitehouse. Head's still a bit spinning, but I'll be alright after a short walk. I'll help you over, said Casey. Jane watched from the mess room's window as the two walked over to the chairman's office at the other side of the site. She turned to Corpse. How long will it take to repair Whitehouse's engine? It'll need a new drive wheel, and the axles need strengthening. The body shell took most of the force and will need straightening out and some parts remirrored, but I'd say probably maybe a month at least. And Lady Grange? Well, I actually have no idea what's wrong with her. There's a blockage somewhere in her system, but I just can't find it. How have you found your position here since Whitehouse got you that job? I think you once mentioned that you wanted to pursue other tasks. What made you decide on working here in the end? Oh, I don't know really, said Corpse. Family connections, I suppose. I didn't often see Whitehouse, but it's great to be able to see him again and socialise. But maybe it was to do with the, Corpse paused as he considered what he was going to say next. Yes? Asked Jane. Staff shortage, Corpse said at last. Yes, staff shortage. He had almost told Jane about the lost engine incident. He too was involved in that event, and had also been asked by Casey and Whitehouse to stay quiet about it. Oh, said Jane, somewhat surprised at the result. Well, I thought there was something more to it. Just then, young Matt rushed in, looking quite distressed. They've sacked them, he exclaimed. Who sacked who? Asked Corpse. Chris and Mike. Mark's given them the push. Some cups smashed to the floor. He's done what? Jane nearly shrieked, but Corpse was already out the door before she could say another word. Cars was walking back to the mess room with his clipboard behind his back. His decision was not considerate, but he felt that it was the best thing he could do. Now, to sort out another matter, and it was coming his way. Have you gone out of your mind? Said Corpse. Chris is our best driver here, and Mike is also a key worker too. Why'd you give them a sack for something that they couldn't control? I've spoken to the chairman and the directors, and they too have agreed that it's best that Chris and Mike were relieved of their duties here at the railway, said Carr sternly. I don't believe you, Mark, said Jane coldly. What was it that you said the other day to them? You came to help us after all the trouble caused to Casey and Whitehouse, which has now helped us become successful, and now you've given them their cards. In order to continue to be successful, sacrifices will need to be taken, said Cars, his tone still not changed. Now, if you will excuse me, I have to sort out who's taken this evening's train. Jane and Corpse watched on in disbelief. This was not like Cars at all. He's certainly changed for the worse, said Corpse. It's almost like he's back working for the Motorcar Society. The who? Asked Jane. That had done it. But Corpse was too cross with Cars to stop himself from mentioning it. A while back, Cars used to work for a firm up the road from us here as its second-in-command. The Motorcar Society is a black market dealership that sells old and sometimes stolen vehicles to customers for dodgy prices. Anyway, one day something happened that resulted in Cars resigning from it altogether. That's when he came to work for us, and to be honest, I'd say he'd be best to go back there. The sooner the better. Perhaps we should ask them to take him back, suggested Jane. You think we should? After what he's done? Of course! Like you said, that place is only up the road from us, so we won't be gone for too long. Corpse thought about it. If they can sneak out before Cars notices that they're missing, they should get everything sorted. Alright, but we'll have to act fast. You'll have to make an excuse for the mess room to be closed while I'll see if I can find a relief to cover me in the workshops. 10 minutes later, Corpse and Jane found themselves walking through the rusty gateways of the Motorcar Society. The memories of his last visit here made Corpse feel uneasy. He noticed the old building where Bernard had made his homemade petrol and where he and Whitehouse snuck in to rescue Casey with a homemade bike that he had made. He had left it behind since then and could now see what remained of it, now in bits, scattered across the courtyard. He was too busy thinking about it when he bumped into an employee mechanic. Oh, sorry, Corpse said. We're looking for the boss. You buying? Asked the employee. His face then turned to Jane as a grin began to form on his greasy face. Or are you selling? He said. Jane gasped in horror, but Corpse stood firm. We're here to discuss an ex-employee that we'd like him to take back. Now, can you tell me where to find the boss? Corpse turned to Jane, who pointed to him where two boys stood by a metal stairway. Corpse got the feeling that he'd seen them before, but he couldn't quite picture it. You'll find the boss in this direction, sir, said the tall one. What was up with that voice? Did he have a sore throat? Nodding a thanks, Corpse and Jane ascended to where they were directed to a large office, which had the strangest of odours coming from it. A young girl about Jane's age sat at a desk, struggling to type on an old-fashioned typewriter. Didn't this place have computers at all? We're here to see the manager, said Corpse. I'll just let him know you're here, said the girl. She pressed an intercom buzzer beside her. There are two people here to see you, sir. Send them in. The two entered the office, which was nothing that they had ever encountered before. It reminded Jane of those offices from those old black and white American detective films her grandparents used to watch. Hello, said Jane. Anybody about? Could do with opening a window in here, said Corpse, waving away some olive green smoke. Where's the smoke coming from anyway? A match struck close by, lighting up a face from behind the darkened shadows by the wooden desk. Bernard smiled at the pair as he puffed life into his 57th cigar. You'll have to forgive me smoking, he said warmly, but my doctor says it's medicinal for my health. What doctor prescribed you that? Asked Jane suspiciously. Bernard waved a hand dismissively. Some doctor chap I knew 40-odd years ago. Anyway, it's done me good, so I'll leave it at that. And now, he said, showing the two some carefully placed chairs before them. It almost gave the impression that he was expecting them. What is the honour of having Mr. Clements and Miss Wilkinson visiting my little business? He raised a hand before either of them asked. News travels fast in these parts. Your reputation to the little railway has been well known to us. So please, what can the Motorcar Society do for you? At first, Corpse wasn't so sure what to say. This wasn't the welcoming he remembered when he was last here. Maybe the prison sentence did something to this man that made him see the light in some way. We've come to ask about a past employee of yours, Mark Carson. I believe he served with you a while back as your second-in-command, asked Jane. Bernard leaned back in his chair and puffed another cloud. Mark Carson, he mused. Yes, the name does ring a bell. I believe he left us during a troublesome time here, a time where we needed his services deeply. Well, he's currently working for us at the military railway, and, well, we don't think his way of running the system works for us, so we were wondering if you would like to hire him back. Bernard looked at the two with some concern. He seemed surprised at such thought. But my friends, isn't your business not doing so well with how he works it? Well, yeah, but, hesitated Corpse, he fired two of our key workers for something they weren't responsible for, finished Jane. Bernard's eyes widened in horror. Really? Your key workers? We found his actions to be irresponsible to how we run things at the railway, explained Corpse. All we ask is for him to return working here where we think his way of command will be more suitable. Bernard stood up from his desk and walked to the window thoughtfully. Well, I thank you for taking the time to come and tell me this. But like I said, Carr's left here when we needed him most, and I don't think we would like to welcome back a deserter to our ranks. I don't even know if he wants to leave. We can arrange for his dismissal, said Corpse. We'll hold a deputation with our chairman and explain everything about his actions. Our chairman will understand when we tell him. He always does. Bernard shrugged with a sigh and returned to the desk. Well, if you really wish for him to return here, then I'm sure we can arrange for his employment forms to be sent over. I'll have 2 of my best men bring the documents over to your society in the next hour. Now, if you don't mind, I have some work to sort out. Good day to you both. Bernard waited till the door closed before a Cheshire Cat grin formed on his face. Soon, it wouldn't be long before the fools make their biggest mistake. And so, sir, that is why we feel it right that Mark should leave now in case he puts the whole railway out of operation. The chairman raised his fingers in a steeple-like manner and leaned back against his office chair. Well, I must say, Mr. Clements, you've put it very boldly with the subject. However, Mr. Jones and Mr. Whitehouse's dismissal was concluded with the evidence of lack of attention to work and enthusiasm. Lack of enthusiasm, burst out Jane. With respect, sir, I think you should look further into your employees' bios, for I'm positively sure that Casey and Whitehouse have as much enthusiasm to work here than anyone I've served tea for here. The chairman turned to Cars, who was sitting very quietly by his desk. Casey and Whitehouse? He asked. We sometimes address ourselves by our childhood nicknames, sir, Cars explained. Chris is Casey, and Mike is Whitehouse. Casey Jones, mused the chairman with a chuckle. The youth today. But coming back to the matter in question, you think that sending Mr. Carson back to the employment of the Motor Car Society would be a big help for the railway? Corpse and Jane looked very serious about it. That is correct, sir. And if we may add that when he leaves, may we have Chris and Mike back to our employment? I suppose something could be arranged, if they so wish to return. The chairman turned back to Cars, who was unmoved by the whole scenario. Anything you'd like to say, Mr. Carson? The room fell silent as Cars straightened up and looked coldly at both Corpse and Jane. Yes, sir, I do. The two thought he was going to erupt, but surprisingly, it never happened. Instead, Cars began to clap his hands and smiled. The chairman clapped too, much to the confusion of Corpse and Jane. Well done, said Cars. You played the part to a T. At first I wasn't so sure you were going to do it, but I was wrong. Corpse and Jane just stared. And I can't believe you actually went into the MCS and up to Bernard's office too, Cars continued. He held out his palm with a laugh. That's £20 you owe me, sir. To which the chairman exchanged a note from his jacket pocket. Sorry, did we miss something here? Asked Corpse. Do you actually want to go back working for Bernard? Cars looked shocked. Back to Bernard? Are you out of your mind? Never in a million years. But All will be explained in a few moments, said Cars calmly. He went over to another door and called into it. You can come in now, lads. Jane and Corpse stared open-mouthed as Casey and Whitehouse entered the room. You? But I thought you were... Oh, come off it, Jane. Did you really think I would actually sack 2 of the most vital working employees here? Laughed Cars. But those accidents, said Corpse. And the visitors. Yes, those were unfortunate, said Cars, nodding gravely. And I'm sure it has dampened our reputation a little. But sometime after Casey's accident, I had a feeling that something was not right. As Casey had said earlier to me, Lady Grange was in tip-top condition before she was put in the sheds last night. And then suddenly, she becomes troublesome. How? Casey has taken care of that engine since he first bought it, and has since slaved away to ensure that it is the finest working engine we have on this railway. So how could she have failed when so much care and devotion was given to ensure she wouldn't? He paused before announcing, Sabotage. Sabotage? Asked Corpse. Yes, Corpse. But at the time I wasn't properly sure, until Whitehouse's accident with Puffer. Now, that was when I knew that something was up. And so, I arranged for Casey and Whitehouse to come here and told them my views, and to create this small charade of sacking them. But hang on, said Jane. If you knew it was sabotage, where's the proof of it? We can answer that, said Casey, stepping forward. You see, after you and Corpse left to go to the MCS, myself and Whitehouse went to check on Lady Grange and the section where Puffer derailed. It took me a minute to prize it out, but this was the culprit for Lady Grange's smokescreen. From his waistcoat pocket, Casey produced a now soft, ash-covered apple. It had been jammed down the chimney so that it completely bunged it up. When the heat in the smoke box built up, the apple cooked and softened slightly, enough to allow all the block soot and ash to shoot up like a geyser. Puffer's crash took some time to solve too, said Whitehouse. After the crash, when you were helping clearing away Puffer and the smashed coach, you also fixed a bit of track that got broken in the accident. That's right, said Corpse. I fixed it before I went to check on you at the mess room. Aha! But what if that rail was already broken before the crash? Said Whitehouse. Puffer isn't as heavy as the other engines here, so it couldn't have broken the rail. None of us had yet used that section of line when we started work. I took the coaches to the station on the opposite side of the circuit rather than my usual route, as Puffer was not facing the right way. But how did the rail get broken then? Asked Jane impatiently. We did some inquiring with the rail galleries, said Cars, opening his laptop, and they allowed us to gain access to their security cameras, which are placed around the railway. Now, if you watch this video first here from yesterday's run, you'll see that the rail has not been tampered with. But fast forward 3 hours after closing time, they all watched as two figures appeared on the screen. The first went to the engine sheds, picked the lock, and went inside. The other figure went over to where Puffer's crash was going to happen, and began prizing the rail out of place with a crowbar. So those are our culprits, said Cars, pausing the video to where the figures on the screen stood next to each other. Corpse looked at the screen carefully. Hang on, he said. I think I know those two. We saw them earlier at the Motor Car Society. But hang on, said Jane, still feeling confused. If you knew that the Motor Car Society was behind all this, why did you let us go through that whole scenario of getting them to hire you back? I had to though, Jane, explained Cars. I had to let this plan go ahead so that we can get the reason for this act to be carried out. So far, you and Corpse played your parts well, and I must ask for your forgiveness for making you go through all this without any consent. Making this feel more natural would be the only way to convince Bernard that this plan to hire me back is to go ahead, but he doesn't know that we have a plan already cooked up for him. Bernard hummed a tune as he busily made the final checks in the re-employment forms he had made up for Grinder and Gears to take round to the railway. Now, to the eye, they looked perfectly fine and basic, with the common uses of the wording, I, insert name here, hereby agree to undergo the tasks that are placed before me under the care and ownerships of the distributors, etc., promptly attends the hours given, etc., fax mentis incentium gloria cultum, etc., memo bis, punitella delicatum. Maybe those last bits were a bit much. But then who's ever studied Latin these days? Bernard then checked the last item on the forms before he signed his seal of approval in the signature box, leaving the opposite blank for Cars to fill his name in. To the naked eye, these signature boxes looked perfectly normal. But while Bernard's box was indeed a box, the other was made of many words which included the following: by signing this contract, I, the individual, bestow my labour to the party enclosed for the rest of my duration. This had worked for all his workers. If only he had done it while Cars were still working for him. But then he did such a good job on his first day, the thought of it left him. But that was going to be put right once and for all, and not even the directors could stop him from carrying out this trick. He pressed his intercom button. Rachel, send Grinder and Gears to my office. The brothers reported as requested. Bernard handed them the envelope on which he had placed the forms in. He smiled as he struck up a celebratory cigar. It'll be good to go back to the old days again and have the money flowing in once more. Make sure that he signs the forms in full so that we've got him for sure. Gears saluted with a grin. Have no fear, sir. We'll make sure of it. We'll be back with him in no time, added Grinder, elbowing Gears in the eye with his salute. Good. Now off you go. It is nearing the time of your appointment. I can't wait to see the look on his face when we bring him back with us, scoffed Grinder as they made their way towards the railway. But seeing as we had more time working for Bernard than he did, perhaps we'll be the ones teaching him for a change. Well, I like the sound of it, agrees Gears. Then we'll be the ones barking at the orders to him. They rounded the corner to where Corpse and Janes were waiting by the station platform. The brothers stopped a few feet away, looking around for cars. "So, has he decided to show up? Or should we wait till the iron horses drag him out?" calls Grinder. A figure stepped out from behind the ticket office. "I'm here," said Cars. He walked over to Corpse and Jane, who both looked very serious. "So good to see you again, Mark, after so long," smiled Grinder. "You'll have lots to catch up on once you're back with us." "Did you bring the forms?" asked Corpse. Gears responded by waving the envelope. "He's been asked to sign them first," he informed, and beckoned a finger to Cars. "You still want me to do this?" Cars asked Corpse and Jane aloud. They nodded in unison. Cars only walked halfway to the brothers when he paused and turned around. "Supposing I said I was sorry about what I did and we let bygones be bygones, I'm sure we can work something out." Corpse and Jane looked at each other in a confused manner. "Oh, please," said Grinder. "Like that's ever going to—" "All right, sure," smiled Jane. "We can deal with that option. We may have gone a bit overboard with the whole firing issue. I'm sure we can work around everything," agreed Corpse. "Sounds good to me," smiled Cars. He turned back to Grinder and Gears, who were dumbstruck by the sudden turn of events. You guys don't mind, do you?" "Mind? Of course we mind!" spluttered Grinder. "We didn't come all this way just to be told that you're not coming back with us." "Well, it looks like you have," smiled Corpse, walking up to Cars. "You better tell Mr. Williams that we changed our minds." "Now hold on," Gears scorned, storming up to the group. "We came here under Burnett's orders to take you back to the MCS. Now either sign this form and come back quietly, or we'll have to use other matters." This time it was Jane who stepped forward. "You're not laying a hand on him," she insisted. Gears grabbed her arm and thrust her aside onto the ground. Cars glared at him. "Sign the—" But before he could say another word, Jane let out a scream. "My arm! It hurts so much!" Jane sat on the ground, clutching her left arm in pain. The tears were rolling down her face, but not as much as the embarrassed sweat that was rolling down Gears's. "Jane!" exclaimed Cars, and hurried over to her. "She did nothing to you, and yet you struck her down!" shouted Corpse. "Oh, nice one, Gears!" yelled Grinder. "Make the cute one cry, why don't you?" There was a silent pause in Jane's sobs, almost as if she took offense to that remark. But her wails began again, while Cars tried to comfort her. I didn't mean—" Gears hesitated. He looked on while Jane continued whimpering. "Here, let me help you up," he said hospitality. Jane's sobs slowly started to subside. Then it happened. Without warning, Jane swung a left hook and got Gears right between the eyes. Wham! He stumbled backwards and collapsed on the ground, while Grinder watched on, open-mouthed. The form papers scattered about the tarmac. "Whew. One thing you must never do when working for a miniature railway," said Jane, shaking life back into her hand as she stood up, "is to never let your guard down." "Or mess with Jane," added Corpse, watching on impressed. You little," Gears cursed, checking that he wasn't bleeding. "We should have waited so that you were the ones that got fired instead of those drivers." "So you were the ones that caused those accidents to happen," said Cars, raising an eyebrow. "Gears, you idiot!" yelled Grinder. "You're not supposed to tell them!" "It was Burnett's idea," exclaimed Gears angrily. "We just followed orders." "Shut up!" said Grinder. "And all this just to trick me into coming back to the MCS? What do you expect?" "Gears, shut up!" "Thank you," said Cars. He turned and called out, "Did you get all that, Casey?" Casey stepped out from behind the ticket office with his mobile phone in his hand. "Got everything?" he called back. "But," exclaimed Grinder. "Hold on," said Cars. He turned and waved at the security camera on one of the lampposts. From his pocket, he pulled out a walkie-talkie. "You got the footage all right, Whitehouse?" "Clear as crystal," Whitehouse's voice replied. Cars returned his gaze to the brothers. "I'm sure the directors will be very interested to see what Bernard has been up to since he returned," he said. "Now look," said Grinder, "all we wanted was to get back on track with the business. We're not doing so well as it is, and we need the knowledge you provided for us to get things sorted." "He's bluffing," said Casey. "I can see that he is." "No, he isn't," said Cars. "I know these two more than you do, and I can read them like a book. But what they say is true. But hang on, Mark, said Corpse. You're not doing what I think you're doing. They are another business as well as us, and are also doing the best they can to keep things going. By selling black market vehicles? Well, yes, but maybe there are other reasons, sighs Cars. He thought a moment, and then said, Alright, you two. This is the deal. I will contact Bernard via phone call to discuss how to get his business back on track. I will provide what knowledge I know, but after that, that's it. You're on your own. I made my choice when I left the MCS, and I'm not going to go back on my word. I'm staying put here at the railway, and nothing, I repeat, nothing, is going to make me change my mind. Without another word, Grinder and Gears headed back to the MCS to relay the information to Bernard. White has arrived from the museum's security booth. I've got the CCTV footage. What do you want me to do with it? He asked. And my vocal recordings of Grinder and Gears' confession, added Casey. There was a pause before Cars answered, Destroy them. What? Even if we blackmail Bernard, he will always find ways to wriggle out of it, explained Cars. If he does mend his ways after my phone call with him, then so be it. If he doesn't, then we'll have more of this charade to come in the near future. But fear not, for with my knowledge on how they operate, and with our background on dealing with them, we will see to it that they will not succeed in closing us down. Background? Questioned Jane. The four looked at her, then to each other. Who was the one to get them out of this predicament now? Yes, said Whitehouse slowly. You see, it's like this, Jane. As strange as it does sound, this is exactly how it happened. You see, Bernard needed Cars to make a sort of ray gun. As Whitehouse explained his story to Jane, the others sighed with relief. Their secret was safe. Shortly afterwards, work resumed as normal on the miniature railway. Both Lady Grange and Puffer were back in working order in no time, and continued with their work without fault. After word went round that the events that happened with Casey and Whitehouse's trains were acts of vandals and sabotage, the visiting group returned and finally got the chance to experience travelling on the little line, with positive outcomes, I might add. And what about the MCS? Well, Cars did make his phone call with Bernard and gave him all the details needed to get his business back on track. However, doing so will result in a lot of sacrifices, ones that Bernard was not financially prepared to make. So despite Cars' attempts to get him to redeem himself, Bernard resumed his business the way it had always been, selling black market vehicles to unexpected customers and plotting ways to get rid of the miniature railway to make his factory. But that will never happen, for with the help of the small group, the railway has nothing to fear in its years of operation. And you will hear how they got on in the next installment of Miniature Railway Adventures.